Little black girl told the judge, "I'm my mom's lawyer." Then something unbelievable happened. Objection. The girl's voice rang out like a bell, too loud, too clear for a courtroom that had gone dead silent. All eyes turned to her. The judge narrowed his eyes. "I'm sorry, who are you?" The little girl, maybe 10 years old, didn't flinch. She stepped forward from the wooden pew, braids swinging, clutching a thick manila folder to her chest. Her oversized coat dragged behind her like a cape. "I'm my mom's lawyer," she said. You could hear people breathing now. Just that. No one moved. No one knew what to say. The prosecutor's lips parted, a smirk forming, until the girl dropped the folder on the table with a slam and flipped it open. "I have evidence," she said. That's when it happened. One of the jurors stood up like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. He locked eyes with the girl. His face changed, twisted into something sharp, panicked. He looked at the judge, then at the girl again. And then he ran. Not walked. Not panicked quietly. He bolted out of the jury box, knocking over a chair, sprinting for the side door like the walls were on fire. Security chased after him. The judge was shouting. Reporters were scrambling over each other for their cameras. The girl? She never moved. She just looked up at her mom, sitting in the defendant's chair, smiled, and said, quietly, "I told you I could do this." But who was she? And why did that juror run the second he saw her face? Keep watching. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Subscribe, hit that like button, and stay till the end. Because the truth behind this little girl isn't just shocking. It's buried in a past no one saw coming. Her name was Evie, short for Evangeline, but no one ever called her that except her late grandma when she was scolding her. Evie lived in a narrow, 3-story walk-up on the edge of Chicago's South Side. Peeling walls, loud neighbors, a landlord who hadn't fixed the heat since November. Her mom, Danica, worked nights cleaning at the hospital. She came home before sunrise with swollen ankles and a forehead that never seemed to stop creasing. But she always made time for Evie, read to her, packed her lunch, kissed her cheek, even when she was bone-tired. Evie knew her mom loved her. Knew it in the way she guarded their tiny world like it was a castle, even if the roof leaked and the walls groaned when the wind blew. But lately, things had been different. It started on a Wednesday. Evie came home from school and the door was open. Not all the way, just cracked. She froze, heart stammering, because that door was never open. Not without her mom. Inside, the apartment looked the same. Nothing missing. Nothing broken. But Danica's favorite coffee mug, blue, with a chipped handle, was on the floor, shattered. Evie stepped around it and found her mom in the kitchen, sitting on the floor, crying silently, both hands clenched into fists. "Mom," she whispered. Danica didn't answer, didn't even look at her. The next morning, her mom smiled too wide and said it was just work stress, that sometimes life just feels too heavy. Evie didn't believe her, not really, but she nodded anyway. That was the first time. The second came 2 weeks later. Police. 4 of them. No sirens. No announcement. Just quiet, sharp knocking at 4 a.m. and then, "Danica Monroe, you're under arrest for the murder of Dr. Stephen Armand." Evie screamed. They handcuffed her mom right there in the hallway. No shoes. No coat. Just a ratty bathrobe and a confused, terrified look on her face. Evie didn't know who Dr. Armand was. She didn't know why they were saying her mom had stabbed him in his home, or why they kept saying premeditated. All she knew was her mom kept whispering, I didn't. And no one believed her. No one except Evie. School was a blur after that. Teachers spoke softly around her like she might break. Kids whispered. Some avoided her altogether. A few asked too many questions. She stopped eating in the cafeteria, stopped going out for recess, started carrying a worn-out copy of To Kill a Mockingbird everywhere she went. Not because she liked it, but because it made her feel close to her mom. Her mom had once told her, "That little girl, Scout, she's tougher than all of them. Just like you." Evie didn't feel tough. Not until she saw the trial date on the paper. 6 weeks away. Not enough time. Not fair. And then came the letter. It wasn't addressed. No stamp. Just slid under her door in the middle of night. Inside, a photocopy of a court document from 12 years ago. Case sealed. No name on the sender. Evie read it once, then twice, then again. She didn't understand all the words, but she knew what it meant. Her mom had been in court before. Not as a defendant, something else. Something hidden. And she wasn't alone. That's when Evie made the decision. No one else was going to fight for her mom like she would, so she did what no one expected. She studied. Hard. She read court transcripts on the library computer, downloaded PDFs about legal terms, watched videos of courtroom trials until her eyes burned, asked questions no 10-year-old should be asking. She started writing things down. Arguments, motions, objections. She built a case. And then she started noticing something else. The name of the lead juror, Gregory Elms. It meant nothing. Until she saw him in one of the old trial documents from the letter. A witness. Different name, same face. Older now, grayer, but him. A witness in a sealed case tied to her mom. Something clicked. Evie didn't know exactly what yet, but it was enough. Enough to push her forward. To step into that courtroom. To tell the judge, I'm my mom's lawyer. And to look a guilty man in the eye and make him run. But why did he run? And what was in that old case that no one wanted her to find? You're going to want to see what happens next. Keep going. It's about to get real. The courtroom emptied out like a shaken beehive. Reporters swarmed the hallway. Bailiffs scrambled in every direction. The judge slammed his gavel so many times it sounded like gunshots. But Evie just stood there, her little hand resting on the folder, her eyes fixed on the door the juror had disappeared through. Her mom was still in shock, half risen from the defendant's chair. One cuffed wrist trembled, the other hand covering her mouth. She didn't say a word. The judge leaned forward. Court is in recess. 15 minutes. Security, get that girl out of here now. 2 guards moved toward her. Evie didn't flinch. I haven't finished. The prosecutor barked. She's not an attorney. This is a stunt. She has evidence, a voice cut in, soft but firm, from the back of the room. Everyone turned. It was Ms. Loring, Danica's public defender. Normally quiet, perpetually tired, and so, underpaid, she wore the same blazer to every hearing. But today, something had changed. She walked forward, heels clicking, face pale but determined. Let her speak, she said, just for a minute. The judge stared her down. She's a child. Yes, Ms. Loring said, but you just lost a juror in the middle of trial due to her opening a folder. I think the court deserves to know why. The room held its breath. The judge's jaw twitched. 1 minute. Evie opened the folder. Inside was a printed photo, slightly crumpled, with a courtroom seal on the corner. A still frame from a sealed video. She placed it on the table and pointed to the man in the back row of the jury box. Gregory Elms, she said. He lied to get on this jury. He changed his name 3 years ago, but he testified in a sealed trial 12 years ago. One connected to my mom. Ms. Loring took the paper, eyes scanning quickly. Then she froze. You found this? She asked quietly. Evie nodded. I think it's why they chose this jury. What trial was it? The judge asked. Evie looked up at him. I don't know yet. It's sealed, but he knew who my mom was. That's why he ran. The judge rubbed his temple. Court is in recess. Everyone out. Evie exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. But the question lingered, heavy and sharp in the air. What did that man know about Danica Monroe that he wasn't supposed to? 3 weeks earlier. The letter sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days before Evie opened it. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because it had no return address, or maybe because the last time someone knocked on their door unannounced, they took her mother away in handcuffs. But curiosity won. The envelope was plain, white, no markings. Inside, 1 sheet of paper, a case number, a blacked-out court record, a single name, not redacted, Danica Elspeth Monroe. Evie stared at it confused. Her mom never used a middle name. She flipped it over, nothing, no note, no clue who sent it, just that case file with the words sealed by federal order. She tried to Google the case number on the school library computer the next day. Nothing came up. Then she searched the name Elspeth. That's when she found an old newspaper clipping in an archive page. Chicago child disappears after witnessing murder, FBI involved. The child's name? Unnamed. But the article mentioned a young female witness placed under protective custody in 2013. The year Evie was born. Evie started watching the trial recordings online. Her mom's attorney, Ms. Loring, was trying, but it was clear the case was being steamrolled. The prosecution had a mountain of circumstantial evidence. Danica's fingerprints on the victim's door, a recorded voicemail from the doctor saying he felt threatened, and a motive they insisted on repeating like gospel, revenge for losing her job. What no one said out loud was the fact the victim was a white doctor in a wealthy neighborhood, and Danica was a black woman from a poor part of town. But the undercurrent was there. Always. Evie noticed things. Small things. Like how the prosecutor always called her mom the defendant, never by name. Or how the jurors looked more bored than focused, barely scribbling notes. So she started taking her own. She sat in her room every night, lit by a weak desk lamp, surrounded by printouts and sticky notes, drawing lines between names and events, trying to build a map that made sense. She needed help, but not from the adults who didn't listen. So she reached out in secret. She posted a question on a law forum, posing as a paralegal. Then another. She got answers, resources, PDFs of civil rights cases, tips for filing Freedom of Information Act requests, even a scanned copy of an old trial manual used in law school. She read it all, slowly, carefully, and piece by piece, the shape of something wrong began to take form. She found Gregory Elms on an archived payroll document for the state of Illinois under a different name, Douglas Guerin. Worked in the state Witness Protection Support Division, listed as support personnel, not a sworn officer. 12 years ago, he was involved in a sealed case where the sole witness, a young black woman, was placed under protection after testifying against a group of politically connected individuals. No one said the words police or judges, but the implication was there. Evie printed the photo from the trial footage and compared it to the man now serving on the jury in her mom's trial. Same nose, same eyes, same scar on the temple. That's when her hand started shaking, because if that man lied his way onto the jury, and if he knew who her mom really was before any of this started, then maybe the trial wasn't about Dr. Armand's murder at all. Maybe it was about shutting Danica up. 3 days before her courtroom interruption, Evie visited her mom in county lockup. They sat across from each other, separated by scratched-up plexiglass. Evie placed the folder on the counter. "I know you were in witness protection," she said, quietly. Her mom went still. Not shocked, more like exhausted. "Who told you that?" Danica whispered. "No one. I figured it out." Danica didn't answer, just stared at her daughter like she'd grown 2 heads. "You're not mad?" Evie asked. Her mom leaned close to the glass. "Evie, the people I testified against, they still have power. If this gets out..." "I think they're already coming for you," Evie said. "You're in jail, and one of them is on your jury." Danica's face changed. Not fear, not anger, resolve. "Then we fight," she said. Back in the courtroom, after the judge called recess, Ms. Loring pulled Evie aside. "You understand if we use your information in court, you might become a target." Evie looked up at her. "So was my mom. I'm not scared." Ms. Loring nodded slowly. "Okay then," she said. "Let's blow this thing wide open." And they did. Keep going. What comes next will change everything. The next day, Evie walked into court with Ms. Loring by her side. Not as a lawyer, officially, but as a research assistant. It was the judge's compromise. She could sit at the table. She could whisper, pass notes, submit evidence. But she couldn't speak again in open court, unless ordered. Evie didn't care. She had what she needed. The folder was thicker now, heavier, a weapon made of truth. Danica gave her daughter a small nod as she walked past the holding area. Her hands were still cuffed, but something had changed in her eyes. Hope. The judge took his seat. He looked 10 years older than yesterday. Before we resume, he said, "This court acknowledges a development during recess. The individual known as Gregory Elms has been placed in custody pending investigation into jury tampering and perjury." The courtroom murmured, "He will be replaced. This trial will proceed." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to object to any use of sealed federal documentation being introduced into this case by a minor or any non-certified legal personnel." Ms. Loring rose just as quickly. "Your Honor, if the court is being manipulated by individuals from a sealed case that directly connects to my client, then we aren't just arguing about admissibility. We're arguing about the integrity of the entire judicial process." Evie slid a file toward her. Loring took it and opened it with practice calm. "May I approach?" The judge gestured her forward. Inside the file was a transcript, a typed-out version of a conversation Evie had uncovered by digging through public FBI press conferences from 12 years ago, one that mentioned a Jane Doe witness providing evidence in a murder-for-hire case involving a Chicago City official and several unnamed parties. The names were redacted, but the date on the transcript matched the day Evie's mom went into labor with her. The judge read the first page, then the second. His face changed. He passed it to the bailiff without a word. "Defense may proceed," he said. His voice was quiet. That was the moment it shifted. The courtroom didn't feel like a machine anymore. It felt like a wound, slowly reopening. Later that night, in the silence of their cramped apartment, Ms. Loring leaned forward at the kitchen table, while Evie sat across from her, flipping through documents. "I looked you up," Loring said, "on the school site. You're in 5th grade." Evie didn't look up. "6th. They just haven't updated the site." Loring laughed under her breath. "You're terrifyingly smart. You know that." Evie shrugged. "I just want my mom back." Loring tapped the table. "You may be the first kid in history who figured out a sealed federal witness case without getting caught." "I got caught," Evie said. "That's why they're trying to put her away." Loring hesitated. Then she slid something across the table, a photograph. Grainy black and white. It showed Danica, younger, wearing sunglasses and holding a baby. Her face was thinner, harder. "I didn't get it at first," Loring said. "But that baby? That's you." Taken by a court liaison the day your mom was moved to a safe house. Evie stared at it. Something in her chest twisted. "She never told me." She couldn't. She signed a lifetime gag order. If she broke it, even by a word, they could throw her back in jail. Evie frowned. "She's already in jail." "Exactly," Loring said, "which means someone thinks she talked." They both went quiet. Then Evie said, "I think I know who." Back in court, the prosecution tried to steer the narrative back to the murder. They brought out digital maps, timelines, testimonies. They wanted the case to feel small again. Neat. Linear. But it wasn't, because on day 3 of the reopened trial, Ms. Loring submitted a new motion. Motion to compel the release of sealed records under judicial review on the grounds of a conflict of interest by the prosecution's office. The judge rubbed his face. "On what grounds?" Evie passed her another folder. Loring stood. One of the original law clerks who helped redact the files 12 years ago is now a senior consultant to the DA's office. He was involved in this case's pre-trial preparations. The judge's pen dropped. Court adjourned early. The walk home that night was long. Cold. Evie didn't say much. She was tired. Her brain was full of cross-reference documents, highlighted names, timelines that still didn't line up. She was halfway up the stairs when she heard her mom's voice behind her. "Evie." She turned. Her mom was standing in the hallway of their apartment building, a guard behind her, hands free for the first time in weeks. They gave her 24 hours of supervised release under legal review. Evie dropped everything and ran to her. Danica pulled her into her arms and whispered, "You scared me to death." "I scared everyone," Evie said, muffled in her mom's coat. Danica pulled back. "There's something you don't know." Evie blinked. "I didn't just testify back then," Danica said softly. "I was involved. Not guilty, but close. I worked for the man who ordered the hit. I didn't know what he was doing at first. But once I found out, I couldn't stay quiet." Evie's chest tightened. You were the only reason I walked away. I knew they'd kill me eventually, but I had you. So I testified and they gave me a new name, a new life. I thought that chapter was closed. It's not, Evie said. It never was. Danica nodded slowly. And if we open it all the way, I don't know what we'll find. The next day in court, something changed again. A man entered the courtroom through a side door. Broad-shouldered, clean suit, a thin scar along his jaw. He didn't speak, just handed the judge a sealed envelope. Who is that? Evie whispered. Loring leaned close. Federal agent. Internal affairs. The judge opened the envelope. Read. Then looked up slowly. We are entering recess again, he said. Court will reconvene tomorrow. Defense and prosecution, I need you in chambers. Now. And then the judge stood up and walked out, the envelope still in his hand. Loring looked at Evie. What did you just start? Evie didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the man with the scar. Because she recognized him. He was in one of the old photos, too. Not as an agent, as one of the accused. If you think you've seen the worst of it, you haven't. Not yet. Keep going. Everything's about to fall apart. Or come together. The courtroom was cold, even in July. The kind of cold that seeps under your skin and settles in your bones. Evie sat still, her small hands clasped tight in her lap. She couldn't stop staring at the man with the scar, who'd handed the judge that envelope. He didn't sit in the gallery. Didn't leave either. He stood in the back, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like he was waiting for something to go wrong. And he wasn't looking at Danica. He was looking at her. Evie. Later that night, after the apartment went quiet and the guard stationed outside fell asleep in the stairwell, Danica whispered, His name is Daniel Creed. Evie sat up in bed, already dressed. She hadn't even tried to sleep. He worked for Harlan Ellis, her mom continued. He was Harlan's shadow. Cleaner. Enforcer. Whatever you want to call it. The man you testified against. Danica nodded. Creed was never arrested. Never named. His file disappeared before the grand jury. They said he turned on Harlan. Helped the FBI. But there were rumors he stayed close. Too close. Evie's voice was barely a whisper. He looked at me like he knew me. Danica looked away. Mom. I didn't want this to happen, Danica said, almost too softly to hear. You weren't supposed to know. Not yet. No what? Silence. Then, Evie, he's your father. The world stopped moving. No sound. No heartbeat. Just that sentence like a fist through glass. Evie blinked, her body suddenly cold like the courtroom. No, she said automatically, that's not possible. Danica reached into the drawer of the nightstand, pulled out a photo she kept hidden under an old envelope. It was a hospital room. A younger Danica, eyes swollen but smiling. A newborn baby in her arms. And Daniel Creed standing behind her, not smiling. But there. Evie stared at it like it might vanish. You said he was a killer, she whispered. You said you ran from him. I did. Then why would you? Why? Her voice broke. Why didn't you tell me? Danica's eyes glistened. Because I wanted you to grow up without his shadow on you. I wanted you to be yours, not his. Evie stood. She didn't want to cry in front of her. But she did anyway. Everything I'd been fighting for, everything I thought I knew. You still do, Danica said quickly. Everything I said about protecting you, about loving you, none of that changes. Evie shook her head. It all changes. And then she walked out into the night. She wandered until her feet hurt. Down the block, past the liquor store, across the park with the broken swing set, past the corner where her mom used to walk her home from school before the shift started. Every inch of the city felt different now, like someone had rewritten the map in invisible ink. She stopped under a street lamp and pulled out her phone. Typed in Daniel Creed. Nothing on the public internet. Not really. But a news forum had a mention buried in a conspiracy thread. Former federal ghost agent tied to multiple sealed indictments. Rumored to have helped take down Harlan Ellis. Disappeared in 2014. Evie clicked deeper. There was a single blurry photo. Same scar. Same cold eyes. Her father. Her stomach turned. She called Loring. Back at the apartment. Ms. Loring didn't ask why she was calling at 2 a.m. She just opened the door and poured her coffee into a second mug. Evie sat in silence for a while before saying, "He's my father." Loring didn't flinch. "I figured," she said. "He's been in and out of the federal building all week. He knows this case better than the prosecution does." Evie looked at her. "Why is he here?" "To make sure it stays buried." Evie shook her head. "Then why deliver the envelope?" Loring sighed. "Because the best way to control a trial is to act like you're helping it." Evie felt sick. "He wants the case to look fair. But he's watching me." "Probably," Loring said. They were quiet. Then Loring added, "But here's the thing about people like him. They underestimate the people they lie to, especially the kids." Evie looked at her. "You knew my mom's past, didn't you?" "Not everything. But I've been working in this city for 20 years. You start to recognize the shadows that follow good people." She handed Evie a small stack of papers. "What's this?" "Creed's original sealed personnel record. Or what's left of it." Evie flipped through the redacted pages. Black lines everywhere. But she found one note in the margin that wasn't fully erased. "Asset compromised by Monroe testimony. Possible blood tie to child witness." Her breath caught. "I was the insurance policy," she whispered. "Or the threat," Loring said. "Depends on who you ask." The next day in court, everything was different. The judge looked tired. The jury looked nervous. The prosecutor looked angry, but not confident. Evie sat beside Loring, hands folded on the table, eyes focused. Danica sat straighter now, stronger. And Creed? He wasn't in the back anymore. He was at the prosecution's table, consulting. Quietly, the judge tapped the gavel. "We will resume witness testimony. The court has reviewed the submitted evidence and will allow a limited inquiry into the sealed case in question." Loring stood. "We'd like to call Mr. Daniel Creed to the stand." The room gasped. The prosecutor objected immediately. Denied, the judge said, "He entered evidence into this trial. He's part of the record now." Creed stood slowly, straightened his suit, and walked to the witness stand like a man walking into a storm he thought he could control. Evie's hands shook under the table. She clutched her pen like a weapon. Loring began. "Mr. Creed, have you ever been known by any other name?" "Yes." "Were you involved in the 2013 Ellis investigation?" "Yes." "Did you interact with Danica Monroe during that time?" Creed paused. "Then I did." Loring nodded. "And did you know she had a child?" He looked at Evie. "Yes." "Did you know that child was yours?" Silence. Then, "Not officially." Loring walked to the bench. "Did you attempt to remove that child from Danica Monroe's custody?" Creed's mouth tightened. "I made recommendations based on safety protocols." Evie felt her heart pounding. Loring pressed harder. "Did you ever make threats, implied or direct, that Danica's testimony would lead to consequences?" "I followed federal policy." "Did you ever use your position to manipulate or suppress testimony?" Creed leaned forward. "You think this is about me, but it's not. The system doesn't care about one child or one mother. It cares about control. That's all. And I was very good at maintaining it." The room went dead silent. The judge cleared his throat. "That will be all for now." Evie stood. "Your Honor." He looked at her. "You're not." "I have a question for the witness." A long pause. Then, "Proceed." Evie walked up to the stand, looked Creed in the eye. "Why did you come back?" He smiled faintly. "To keep things quiet." "Too late," she said, and placed the final piece of paper on the witness stand, an unsealed affidavit, signed by a former federal liaison, stating that Daniel Creed had falsified portions of the original case file, including a forced request to separate Danica Monroe from her infant daughter. Evie stepped back. The courtroom erupted. Everything is unraveling, and Evie's about to find out what it really means to be her mother's lawyer. Court was recessed indefinitely. The judge left without making eye contact with anyone. The bailiff locked the courtroom doors behind him. Reporters swarmed the front steps like flies on a carcass, hurling questions no one had answers for. Inside, Danica sat frozen in her chair, staring at the wall like it might fall open and swallow her whole. Evie stood by the table, arms crossed over her chest, heart thudding so loud she thought someone might tell her to keep it down. Ms. Loring gathered the papers in slow, careful motions. This just went nuclear. You think they'll come after us? Evie asked. They won't do it in public, Loring said. Not now. She didn't sound certain. Danica finally spoke. If Creed lied in that original file, if he forged my request to give Evie up, they can charge him, Loring said. Federal evidence tampering. Witness coercion. Maybe more. Evie didn't care about charges. Not yet. She just kept thinking about the way Creed looked at her when she handed him that affidavit. Not surprised. Not angry. Amused. He knew this was coming. He was waiting for it. That night, they didn't go home. Ms. Loring checked them into a motel out near Cicero under a false name. One room. Peeling wallpaper. Buzzing neon sign outside the window. The kind of place where you didn't ask questions and you didn't look at anyone too long. Danica sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. Evie sat across from her at the chipped table, the folder between them. The one that had started it all. She opened it again, flipping through the notes she'd made, the printouts, the questions still circled in red ink. One page stuck out. An old fax document, partially burned, rescued from a legal disposal site in Springfield. No header, but a short memo. Asset D. Monroe, position compromised. Transfer request blocked. Child placement proceeding without consent. Cover narrative. Abandonment due to mental illness. Evie's throat closed. They were going to say you left me, she whispered. Danica didn't respond right away. They said it would keep you safe, she said finally. I believe them. For about 5 minutes. Evie pressed her hands flat on the table to stop them from shaking. They would have erased me. Danica looked up, eyes red. That's what they do. The next morning, 2 men in suits showed up at the motel. Not police. Not feds. They wore no badges. No names. They didn't knock. Just waited in the hallway until Loring cracked the door. Miss Loring once said, "We're here as a courtesy." Then turn around and take your courtesy with you. Judge's chambers have been sealed, the second man said. Your client's case is being reviewed by internal counsel. It is strongly recommended you refrain from further statements to the press. And what happens if I don't? Loring asked. The first man smiled. Then the story changes. Loring didn't blink. Get off my floor. They didn't move, just turned and walked slowly back down the hall. Evie watched from behind the curtain. Danica said nothing. She just packed a second bag. By noon, it was all over the news. FBI confirms tampering allegations in sealed witness case. Prosecutor's office linked to forged federal files. Mystery child in courtroom may be key to unraveling decade-old corruption ring. They blurred Evie's face in every photo, but not her voice. Clips from the courtroom leaked online. Her saying, "I'm my mom's lawyer." The moment Creed flinched. The moment the juror ran. Millions of views. Loring turned off the TV. It's viral. Great. We needed people to see it, Evie said. Yes, but now we need to survive it. Danica rubbed her temples. They'll try to paint me as unstable. They already have, Loring said. For years. Evie looked between them. What if we gave them the whole truth? Everything. The full story. Names. Files. Your testimony again. Danica's jaw clenched. That's suicide. No, Evie said. It's control. If we wait, they'll twist it. If we speak first, we write the narrative. Loring nodded. She's not wrong. We'd need documentation. Press willing to risk it. Maybe a documentary crew. We have the files, Evie said. We leaked the story our way. Danica looked at her daughter, something fierce and sad in her eyes. You're not supposed to carry this. Evie looked right back. But I can. The next day, Creed called. Not to Loring. Not to the court. To Evie. He left a voicemail on a burner phone she'd used once to call the courthouse. His voice was calm. Measured. You're very good. Better than I expected. That makes you dangerous. But you're not ready. You think the truth is on your side. But truth is just noise when the right people don't want to hear it. Let your mother take the fall. It'll pass. You'll be fine. You're young. People forget. Or keep pushing and find out what it costs to win. Evie played it for Loring. Twice. Loring copied it to 3 encrypted drives and mailed 2 out of state. Now, we know he's scared, she said. Evie didn't say anything. But she sat at the motel desk, opened her laptop, and began writing a statement. Not for court, for the world. The letter went live that night. My name is Evangeline Monroe. I'm 12 years old. My mother was arrested for a crime she didn't commit. But this isn't just about her. It's about the people who buried the truth to protect themselves. It's about the people who tried to erase me. This isn't a story about a courtroom. It's a story about silence. And I won't be silent anymore. She attached copies of the redacted files, the forged request, the birth certificate, the affidavit. She posted it everywhere. Within hours, it exploded. The hashtag trended, hashtag I'm my mom's lawyer. And for the first time, the people who'd hidden in sealed courtrooms and blacked out files didn't have the upper hand. The world was watching, but watching doesn't stop bullets. The lies go deeper. The danger gets real, and Evie will have to face what happens when you fight power without protection. You've seen what she can do in a courtroom. Now see what she does outside it. Because when secrets can't be buried, someone always tries to bury the person holding them. Keep watching. We're nowhere near the end. The bullet didn't hit her. It hit the sign above the motel's front door, blew through the neon vacancy, like it was made of sugar. Glass rained down onto the concrete. Evie hit the floor behind a parked car, heart slamming in her chest, so hard she thought it might tear loose. A second shot cracked the air. Someone screamed across the street. Then silence. Danica shoved her down and covered her with her own body. Loring was on the motel steps, hand in her coat, like she was reaching for a gun she didn't have. No third shot came. Just the echo bouncing between buildings. Then the low whine of a car engine speeding away. By the time the police arrived, the shooter was long gone. No witnesses, no security footage, no fingerprints, just a ruined sign and a 12-year-old girl sitting on the ground with glass in her hair, refusing to cry. I'm not going to stop, Evie said as the officer checked her arms for cuts. I don't care. Danica sat beside her, pale, quiet. Her fingers trembled, but her voice didn't. Neither will I. Loring paced by the broken railing, on the phone with someone. FBI, she said, or someone close to it. They know where we are, she muttered when she hung up. We're done here. Danica looked up. Where do we go? Somewhere loud, Loring said. Somewhere they can't make people disappear. That night, they moved into a hotel downtown. High floor, multiple exits, press swarming the lobby. Loring made the call herself. To them, the journalists, the documentary producers, the ones with teeth and lawyers and backup, the ones who knew how to expose a story without ending up in a ditch. Evie gave her first interview at 9 p.m., sitting on the edge of a hotel bed with a single lamp lighting her face. She looked straight at the camera. They shot at me, she said, and I'm still here. So now they get to watch me finish what I started. The video went viral in 3 hours. The next day, the case was pulled out of the local circuit and moved to a federal review board. Danica was released under full protective custody. No charges dropped yet, but the judge had seen enough to stop the trial before the jury could be corrupted again. Creed disappeared. Not arrested. Not seen. Just gone. Evie knew what that meant. He was still out there. Watching. Waiting. The days that followed blurred together. News vans lined up on the street. Support poured in from all over the country. Civil rights groups, legal nonprofits, even a few whistleblowers from inside the justice system. Evie became a symbol overnight. But she didn't want to be one. Not really. She wanted her mom to be free. And she wanted to understand the last piece of it, the part no one would talk about. Why had her mother ever trusted Creed? Why had she kept so much from her? And what did the final sealed file say? They got it on a Friday. It came by courier, marked by order of federal court. Unsealed. Inside was the transcript of Danica's final debrief 12 years ago, recorded under oath. Evie read every word. She didn't speak until she reached the last page. "He told you he loved you," she whispered. Danica nodded. "He offered to help you escape." "He did." Evie looked up, but it was a setup. Danica's face was unreadable. "He never meant to leave. He meant to silence me. You were going to tell the world. About Harlan. About the judges." Danica said, "and he found out. So he offered me a way out, and then he planned to take you." Evie's breath caught. "But you ran." "With you. Before he could." Evie folded the file shut. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. She was clear. This is the last time anyone takes something from us. The press conference was held 2 days later. Danica stood beside her daughter, Loring at her side. Cameras everywhere. Danica took a breath. "My name is Danica Monroe. I was a witness in the Ellis case in 2013. I was placed in protection because I testified against people with power, people who murdered and bought silence and manipulated the justice system. I had a child during that time. The government tried to separate me from her. They forged my consent. They erased my records. And then when I stayed quiet for 12 years, they still came for me." She reached out, took Evie's hand, but they didn't count on her. Evie stepped up to the mic. "I'm not a lawyer. Not really. I'm just a kid who wanted her mom back. But if the law doesn't protect people like us, then maybe kids have to start speaking for themselves. I'm my mom's lawyer, and we're not done." Creed watched from a dark bar in another city, alone. On the TV, Evie stared straight at the camera. He drained his drink, pulled a burner phone from his coat, dialed. "This is Daniel Creed," he said. "She's going to keep digging. Which means you need to decide, right now, how deep you want this to go. This is the part where the real war begins. Keep watching. You won't believe who shows up next." It started with a key, a small, rusted one, taped to the back of a photo Evie didn't remember packing. She found it while going through the box of documents they'd brought from the apartment, scanning everything again, piece by piece. The photo was of her and her mom at the lake, son behind them, smiles crooked. Evie had been maybe 5, but the key was the real question. No tag, no explanation. When she showed it to her mom, Danica went still. "Where did you get that?" It was taped to the back of this photo. Danica took it gently, turning it over between her fingers like it might burn her. This belonged to someone I used to know. From the safe house." Evie sat up straighter. "Who?" Danica hesitated. Her name was Ilana. She spoke the name like it hurt. She was in witness protection too. Same case. She knew things. Things I didn't want to know. She warned me about Creed. Evie's mind spun. "Is she dead?" Danica said. "They said it was suicide." Evie's stomach dropped. "But she gave me this key a week before she died," Danica added. "Said, if they come for you, this opens something that might matter." I never figured out what. "Maybe it's time we did," Evie said. The next morning, Loring made calls. Lots of them. The key was old storage locker style, maybe 20 years out of circulation. She checked with records, offices, municipal storage companies, even old law enforcement locker logs. Nothing. Then one archivist emailed back. Key matches style used in offsite storage run by Ledger and Company. Units decommissioned 2014. Address attached. The address was a warehouse on the edge of the city, not far from the rail yard. They went the same day. Evie, Danica, and Loring, no press, no protection, no warning. Just adrenaline and an old metal key that might unlock everything. The warehouse smelled like mold and dust and bad memories. Rows of rusted lockers, many pried open or hanging crooked on their hinges. A single flickering light buzzed in the center of the long corridor. Locker 18C. It took them 15 minutes to find it. The key slid in smooth, like it had been waiting. Inside, one box. Cardboard, taped twice. Label torn off. Evie opened it, and what they found inside changed everything. There were tapes, old DV tapes, labeled by hand. E1, December 14th, 12. E2, January 2nd, 13. E3, March 21st, 13. A notebook, water-damaged but still legible. Ilana's handwriting. Dozens of names, dates, connections between officials, contractors, judges. A crude drawing of a symbol, like a wheel with 4 spokes, marked Project Black File, and at the bottom, a letter addressed to the girl. Evie opened it slowly. If you're reading this, it means you survived. It means Danica survived, and that means they're losing. This isn't about one case. It never was. You were born inside a war most people don't know exists. Project Black File was never about witness protection, it was about leverage. They collected people with secrets, mothers, fathers, children. They erased them, then used them like chess pieces. Your mom tried to escape. So did I. I didn't make it. Maybe you will. Don't stop now. There's more. And someone inside wants this to end too. Look for the name, Gideon Knox. Danica sat down hard on the concrete floor. Her hands trembled. Evie read the letter again. Mom, she said, do you know who that is? Danica shook her head. No, but I've heard that name before. Where? She didn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because the realization hit her like a wave. She whispered it. That was Creed's handler. Back at the hotel, they digitized the tapes. The first was grainy black and white surveillance footage. A warehouse, not unlike the one they'd just left. Men in suits, one of them clearly Creed, interrogating someone tied to a chair. No sound. The second showed a courtroom. Sealed. No spectators. A woman, Ilana, maybe testifying, her face covered in bruises. The third. They almost didn't play the third. It was labeled GFK, Internal Debrief. Do not copy. Evie played it on mute first. A man in a black coat. Face turned aside. Gideon F. Knox. Creed standing beside him. They were arguing. Then Knox slammed a file on the table. The camera shifted. Evie froze the frame. Danica's name was on the folder. So was hers. The next day, Evie sent the tapes to 3 sources. A federal attorney who had quietly helped Loring, a journalist who broke the original Ella story, and the only news outlet willing to host unredacted data. By sunset, it was everywhere. Project Black File. Government allegedly used sealed witnesses for blackmail operation. Whistleblower named in New Monroe case leak. Gideon Knox identified. Child lawyer uncovers massive cover-up tied to 2013 murder trial. Creed didn't show up on TV this time. But the message came another way. An unmarked envelope at the hotel's front desk. Inside, a flash drive. And a note. You wanted the truth. This is your last one. Use it right. The drive held a single video. Gideon Knox. Face uncovered. Looking directly into the camera. If you're watching this, then Daniel Creed broke rank. He wasn't supposed to go back for her. Danica was off limits after she testified. But Creed doesn't like unfinished business. He doesn't like loose ends. And the child, she scared them. She scared me. I worked in the shadows for 30 years. I helped erase people. Silence them. Bury them. Danica Monroe was the only one I ever felt guilty about. Because she didn't run. She fought. And now, her daughter's doing the same. They'll come for me now. That's fine. Let them. But don't stop. The tapes are real. The files are real. And Creed was never just one man. He was the face of a system. So now you burn it down. Keep watching. You've never seen justice like this before. They called it the Court of Exception. No official docket. No courtroom photos. No published rulings. It didn't appear on Google. But it was real. Evie and Loring found the reference buried in a redacted memo from 2009. Just a line. Ruling approved by CE under Directive 7. Another trail led through declassified budget logs, where funds marked for judicial contingencies disappeared into unnamed expenditures tied to a single address in D.C. The court wasn't legal, but it was powerful. It had authorized at least 27 witness relocations, 7 sealed prosecutions, and the shutdown of 5 civil cases tied to government corruption, all without public knowledge. Danica had been their test case. Evie was their mistake. And now they were going to expose it. By the time they arrived in Washington, D.C., the city was already on fire. Not literal flames, but media chaos, federal stonewalling, press briefings full of no comment, and internet sleuths ripping apart every file leaked from the Monroe case archive. The name Gideon Knox was now a permanent fixture on news tickers, and so was Evie's. Everywhere she went, someone recognized her. People called her the girl lawyer or the courtroom kid or the little girl who blew up the system. But Evie didn't care about the headlines. She cared about the truth. She cared about the people the court of exception had buried. And she knew where to find them. The court didn't sit in a courthouse. It sat 5 stories below an old government building disguised as a records annex. Concrete walls. No windows. Keycard access. No signage. Loring had pulled a favor from a senator's aide whose conscience finally woke up. They didn't knock. They walked straight in with boxes of evidence and a letter of demand. Loring led. Evie carried the final file in her arms like a torch. Danica followed. Not in handcuffs. Not as a defendant. As a witness. The man who met them at the elevator was older, with sharp eyes and a limp. Former judge, now nothing but a gatekeeper. He tried to say no. Evie didn't let him. You sealed a courtroom that never should have existed, she said. You buried lives for convenience. You weaponized silence. He narrowed his eyes. And you're what? A 6th grader? I'm the one with the tapes. She didn't blink. He let them through. There was no audience. No gallery. Just 6 officials in suits and silence. No robes. No names. They didn't want a trial, but they were about to get one. Evie took the front table. Opened her folder. Plugged in the flash drive. The screen came to life behind her. Gideon Knox's face filled the room. You don't get to decide who survives a system like this. You don't get to erase children and mothers and pretend it was protocol. You don't get to say classified when what you really mean is, we were afraid of what would happen if the world found out. Evie turned around. We found out. She played the rest of the tapes. Ilana's testimony. The courtroom footage. The warehouse interrogation. Then she read from the files. Every name. Every date. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just read. And the silence in the room cracked like glass. After 6 hours, the officials adjourned. No ruling. No decision. No words at all. They left the room one by one, like the lights were too bright. Evie sat in the chair long after they were gone. Danica touched her shoulder. You did it. Evie shook her head. Not yet. That night, the press called it the trial that was never meant to exist. But Evie didn't care. She released the tapes. All of them. She released the transcript of the hidden court. The footage of the trial. She named names. She didn't redact a single thing. The fallout came fast. Judges resigned. FBI officials were indicted. The former prosecutor in Danica's case disappeared. So did Daniel Creed again. But now there was a warrant. Congress opened an inquiry. And the Monroe case became the first domino in a complete overhaul of the federal witness program. The morning Danica's charges were finally dropped, Evie didn't go to court. She sat on the porch of their new home, modest, quiet, on the edge of the city, watching the sun rise. Danica walked out with 2 mugs of tea, handed one to her daughter. You still want to be a lawyer? She asked. Evie sipped. I think I already am. Danica smiled. Not quite, but close. They sat together, quiet. No sirens. No fear. Just mourning. 3 months later, Evie testified before Congress. She wore the same coat she wore in court, braids tied back, voice clear. This isn't just about me, she said into the mic. This is about every person you thought would never speak. Every life you buried under paperwork. Every voice you silenced with a stamp that said sealed. She looked around the room. I'm not my mom's lawyer anymore. A pause. I'm yours. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss how this ends. Evie was dreaming when the knock came. 3 soft raps. Not loud. Not rushed. Just deliberate. She sat up instantly, heart already pounding, like her body remembered something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. Danica met her in the hallway. No words. Just eyes. The knock came again. Loring opened the door. A man stood there in a coat too warm for spring, holding a small black envelope. No badge, no introduction, just a nod, and the envelope handed to Loring. Then he turned and walked away. Evie took a step forward. Loring held the envelope like it might burn her hand. She opened it. Inside, a USB drive. No label. No note. Danica said what they were all thinking. Creed. They watched it on the living room TV. Curtains drawn. Doors locked. The screen flickered, then came to life. Creed. Older. Thinner, eyes sunken like someone who hadn't slept in years. He sat in a bare room, light coming in from one side, as if he were already halfway in shadow. You won. Congratulations. But if you're watching this, you're about to find out why the game was never just about your mom. He leaned forward. Project Black File wasn't about control. It wasn't even about protection. It was about breeding loyalty, building lives they could own, from birth. And you, Evangeline Monroe, were never an accident. Evie's spine straightened. We knew what your mother was capable of. We didn't want her to testify, so we gave her something to protect, someone to anchor her. We gave her you. Danica gasped softly. She was pregnant when she came into the program, but we made sure she stayed that way. We told her she was carrying your father's child. Maybe she was, but maybe not. Maybe we lied. Maybe we didn't. What matters is you were born into a box we built, and you just kicked your way out. The screen went black. No one spoke. Evie stood up slowly. So you're saying I was a test? Danica's voice shook. No, you were... Mom, Evie said quietly. Did you know? Danica looked at her, eyes wide and glassy. I didn't. I swear. I thought... She stopped herself. I thought I knew. Loring looked down. This is worse than control. This is ownership. Evie walked to the window, stared out at nothing. All this time, she thought she'd been fighting the system. She hadn't realized she was the system's experiment. They filed a new motion the next day, a formal petition to release all records tied to prenatal testing and classified medical interventions made during Danica's time in witness protection. The government pushed back. Hard. They called the motion speculative, irrelevant, emotionally manipulative. But the judge, a new one, granted it. 2 weeks later, the documents arrived. Evie opened them in silence. The truth was plain. They had monitored Danica's pregnancy, injected her with stabilizing compounds under the pretense of prenatal vitamins, tracked her hormone levels, took samples, even flagged Evie for neurodevelopmental enhancement potential. She was labeled Subject E, not Evie, not daughter. Subject. The press didn't get that file. Evie burned it. She didn't want to be the symbol anymore. She just wanted to be real. That night, Danica sat with her on the back steps. I'm sorry, she said softly. I'm not, Evie replied. Danica looked up. Evie was staring out at the city lights, face calm, still, like someone who had made peace with fire. If I wasn't real to them, she said, then I'll make myself real to the rest of the world. One case at a time. You're not angry? Evie gave a small laugh. I'm furious, but not at you. She turned to face her mother. I'm angry they thought they could build me in a box and not expect me to find the door. The next morning, she registered her first real client. A teenager in Michigan, accused of hacking government servers, claimed he found classified files on experiments just like hers. Evie took the case, pro bono, with Loring's supervision, and Danica's quiet strength at her back. Creed was never found. Some said he died in a bunker in South America. Others said he was working in another country, building another version of Black File. Evie didn't care. She wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. She was building something new. A future where kids like her didn't have to fight this hard. The story ended where it began, in a courtroom. But this time when Evie stood and said, Your Honor, I represent the defendant, there were no cameras, no viral clips, no disbelief, just silence and respect. Evie didn't flinch when the door to Loring's office opened and the U.S. Marshal stepped inside. He was older, tall, the kind of man who had lived through a lot and showed none of it. His badge was clipped to his belt, but he didn't need it. His voice had the weight of someone who didn't bluff. You've been asking questions about someone you shouldn't. Evie didn't blink. That hasn't stopped me before. He looked at Loring, then Danica, who sat quietly by the window. I'm not here to scare you, he said. I'm here to give you the last name. Evie straightened. The man behind Black File? The marshal nodded. He slid a file across the desk. Just a name on the cover. Justice Warren Emery. Loring sucked in a breath. No way. Evie opened the file. Her fingers shook when she saw the photo. A judge. Federal. Retired 2 years ago. But she recognized him. He'd presided over her mother's first relocation hearing. The one where they approved her new identity, sealed her past, and declared her history inadmissible. He was the one who ordered the original gag clause. And he was still active on 3 closed oversight panels, 2 of which govern sealed case review. You're telling me the man who built the box, Evie said, still signs the locks? The marshal nodded. And he's been protected. Until now. Evie looked up. Then let's take it to court. The marshal didn't smile. There is no court for this. Not officially. Evie folded her arms. Then we build one. She spent the next week preparing. Not just documents or exhibits, but a strategy. She didn't want a traditional case. She wanted exposure. So she filed a people's petition, a legal maneuver that hadn't been used in 100 years. An open tribunal request backed by citizens for judicial accountability on constitutional grounds. It had no precedent, but it had momentum. Within 3 days, over 50,000 people signed it. By the end of the week, 400,000. Then 1 million. Evie wasn't a viral star anymore. She was a movement. Justice Emery didn't respond publicly, but an anonymous source leaked his sealed testimony, part of a Senate investigation buried 2 decades earlier. In it, Emery defended the creation of quiet oversight mechanisms to protect national interests. He called Black File a necessary evil. Evie called it what it was, a system built to erase people who made powerful men uncomfortable. She stood in front of the press with a single photo in her hand. It was of Ilana. Bruised, brave. Evie held it up. This is who they erased. The tribunal was approved. It wasn't held in a courtroom. It was held in a university auditorium, televised, streamed, and watched by over 20 million people. Justice Emery arrived late. He was thinner now, paler, but still wore his black suit like armor. He sat alone at the front table. Evie stepped to the podium. Her voice was steady. Mr. Emery, do you deny authorizing Project Black File? I do not. Do you deny knowing that children were targeted, used as leverage against witnesses? I did what was necessary for national security. Evie took a breath. Then, explain this. She clicked the remote. On the screen behind her, a scanned file labeled Subject E, Recommendation Long-Term Surveillance. Intelligence use, possible. You signed this, she said. You signed my life. The audience was dead silent. I was 11 when I found out you thought I was a tool. I'm 12 now, and I just dragged your entire legacy into the daylight. Emery didn't look at her. Evie leaned forward. We don't need your apology. We just need you gone. By the end of the tribunal, the panel voted unanimously. Justice Warren Emery was stripped of all judicial credentials, pension, and security clearance. The Department of Justice opened a criminal inquiry, and Black File, as a program, was officially disbanded. 2 months later, Evie stood on the courthouse steps where it all began. Same city, same cracked steps, but now she was taller. Not in inches. In truth, she stood next to her mother, who was no longer in hiding, no longer a sealed name on a list, and she read her last public statement. They thought hiding the truth made them powerful, but all it did was give people like me a reason to dig. My name is Evangeline Monroe. I am not a tool. I am not a subject. I'm a lawyer, and I belong to no one. The crowd erupted in applause, but Evie just closed the folder and walked down the steps. Home. 3 years later, she passed the bar at 15. At 17, she opened her own firm. At 21, She argued her first case before the Supreme Court. They said she couldn't. She said, "Watch me.